Hello, my name is Ksenia Sakharnova and you are watching Film History Blog. Today I will tell you about the pioneers of cinema, the Lumiere brothers and the amazing movie Lumiere, directed by Thierry Frémaux. But first, 2 words about me and my blog. I graduated from VGIT, the oldest institute of cinematography in Moscow. I worked in Moscow Museum of Cinema, then was published in Persona magazine, the internet portal Profi Cinema and others. For the last 7 years I've been working in documentary filmmaking as a director and producer. Together with my husband Kirill Sakharnov, we made such films as 5 Minutes of Freedom, Mama's Kids and the Law, All Is Love, Natalia Gorbanevskaya, I'm Not a Hero. In my blog, I want to help you get to know more about the history of movies. And now, let's talk about the most interesting thing, the birth of a movie. Saturday, December 28th, 1895. This date went down in history as the birthday of the cinema. The first commercial screening of the Lumiere brothers' films took place at the Grand Café on Boulevard des Capucines 14 in Paris at 9 p.m. for the 33 visitors who paid the 1 franc each. A patent application for their invention, the cinematograph, was filled in February 1895. And the first public screening of the first motion picture, Workers Leaving the Lumiere factory in Lyon, was organized on March 22nd of the same year. Yes, this film was the very first movie of the brothers, not the illustrious arrival of the train at La Ciotat. Nevertheless, it is on December 28, 1895, when the Lumiere brothers not only publicly presented their machine, but also sold tickets, foreseeing the huge commercial potential of the cinema. For the sake of justice, it must be said that many scientists of the late 19th century worked on the invention of the cinema. Russian, American, French, German, Polish, English inventors tried to bring the photo to life. However, it was the brothers Louis and Auguste Lumiere who were able to invent the perfect cinematograph apparatus and put production of the first motion pictures on commercial tracks. So, the first movie, Workers Leaving the Lumiere factory in Lyon. It was filmed at the gates of the brothers' factory for the manufacture of gelatine photoplates at Montplaisir, Saint Victor Street 25. The cost of their factory was 3 million francs. Let's watch the first movie ever. Being talented entrepreneurs, the brothers attracted a lot of media attention to their invention. Immediately after the presentation of the cinematograph, they began to receive applications for film screenings in other cities. In the following year of 1896, the first Lumiere program was screened in London, Rome, Cologne, Geneva, Madrid, St. Petersburg, Moscow, New York City. And soon, the popularity of cinematography led to them multiplying their devices. They began to give them for rent, provided that 60% of the rental fees were transferred to the inventors of the novelty. The brothers were actively engaged in cinema for 5 years, and during this time, together with a number of their cameramen, they produced more than 1,400 movies. The first Lumiere brothers program included 10 films, 10 frames about 50 seconds long. It was possible to shoot only this much with the cinematograph. Let's list these films: Workers Leaving the Lumiere factory in Lyon, The Horse Riding, Fishing for Goldfish, The Photographical Congress arrives in Lyon, Blacksmiths, The Sprinkler Sprinkled, Baby's Breakfast, Jumping the Blanket, Cordelier Square in Lyon, and The Sea. As you can see, among these films there is again no celebrated arrival at train at La Ciotat, because this movie was filmed only in January 1896. By the way, the first show of Lumiere films was attended by Georges Méliès, the famous film director, the creator of many effects that enriched the cinema and became the alphabet of the film language. Méliès, who fell in love with the movie at first sight, recalled that the audience was stunned by what they saw and sat literally gaping in surprise.
Перед вами прибытие поезда.
Похоже, на станции не остановится.
На Сан-Лазарский вокзал в Париж. Прекратите борьбу! Что вы делаете? Куда вы бежите? Друзья мои, это ужасно! Куда? Это совсем не страшно. Диана, совсем не страшно.
An interesting detail: the father of the brothers, Antoine Lumiere, in 1893 was among the first spectators of Thomas Edison and his apparatus kinetoscope, which allowed to view a moving image looking with one eye in the eyepiece in a large wooden box. Lumiere, the father, was so impressed by what he saw that he encouraged his sons to invent a cinematograph. Some of the first films made by Lumiere brothers I saw while studying at the film school, and I, like many others, had the impression that they only invented the cinema, but did not make a significant artistic contribution to it. How happy I was to discover I made a mistake after watching the film Lumières at the Moscow Film Festival. I was convinced that Louis and Auguste Lumière made an invaluable contribution to the development of cinema as an art. By the way, the most active filmmaker in this pair was Louis Lumière. He invented the cinematograph by making a mechanism for rolling the film. Louis was the author of most of the films, and the older brother Auguste was more of an organizer. He financed Louis' invention and then acted in several movies with his family, for example in one of the first films, Baby's Breakfast. With the Lumières began the division of the movie into documentary and fiction, because already in their first program was the film The Sprinkler Sprinkled, a simple story about a gardener and a boy blocking the water in the house and getting kicked in the backside. This film we can already attribute to fiction, a stage movie. The story was very popular and was remade several times by the Lumières. They immediately realized that cinema is a movement, and so already in the first films we see how the train rapidly cuts through the frame, how the waves are beating against the shore, how the wall is being destroyed, making a cloud of dust. To create a movement in the frame, the Lumières, overcoming the static of their apparatus, put it on a train, placed it on a floating ship, tram, and even filmed from an air balloon. The first film screenings of cinematography in Russia were held on May 16th and 18th, 1896 in St. Petersburg and Moscow. After the show of the Lumière's program in St. Petersburg, the newspaper Petersburg Page noted that the delight of the spectators was enormous, and the first shooting in Russia took place on May 26th of the same year in Moscow, on the day of the coronation of Nicholas II. The filming was directed by a journalist and cameraman of the Lumière's company, Camille Cerf. The author of the movie Lumières is the director of the Cannes Film Festival and Lumière Institute in Lyon, Thierry Frémaux. This is a half-hour declaration of love to the cinema and its creators, and to watch it is pure delight and aesthetic pleasure, especially for the eyes of the cinephile. Monsieur Frémaux gave a short interview for my blog. Let's listen to him.
It's not a film directed by Thierry Frémaux. I didn't want that. I really want to give the credit to Lumière. It's not my film, it's the Lumière film. I made, of course, everyone wanted me to be, the director of the film. I didn't want that because it's a labor of love, it's a duty for me, and it's a way to show to the world how these films, how these cinematographers, Lumière and all the others, have been great in doing these images. So that's why the film is only, the mention is composed by Thierry Frémaux and commented by Thierry Frémaux, and not directed.
But you made so great voiceover, this commentary. It's a very, very important part of the film.
Yes, because, imagine I sent to the audience 1 hour and a half silent Lumière films.
Yeah.
Nobody will understand. Nobody will get what is important, and especially everybody will be very bored by that. I had to make a film 2017.
Of course.
I don't want to imitate what was the screening at the time. Maybe you can, of course, say that there is too many commentaries. I don't know. When the DVD will come out, you can cut the voice and the music and just watch the film for what they are. Please look at that. You think it's boring, you think it's old movies, you think it's inventor's film and not really cinema. Not at all. This is cinema of today. Here are beautiful shots, beautiful subject matter, And what Lumiere did was really an act of directing, an act of cinema, not an act of inventor of a machine. The message I would give is, don't think it's the Lumiere films are something old, classics and boring. No, it's something of today. And sometimes it's good to go back to the past to wash our eyes. When you watch Lumiere films, it's a way to have it back totally like for the first time.
Yes.
And it's very good as a movie buff also, because what I love is that it's not a film for specialists. It's a film for everybody. You know, a lot of people always talk about the end of cinema.
Yeah.
Okay? No, the cinema will never die. Will never die. Despite internet, despite Netflix, despite internet platform, going to watch a film in a big screen is something which will never die.
Merci, Monsieur Frémaux.
Frémaux collected 108 films from more than 1,400, shot by Lumieres and their cameramans around the world. Each is restored and brought to an almost ideal state, and therefore, looking at these fragments of people's lives of the late 19th century, it is almost impossible to believe that this is the first movie shots in the history of the world's cinema. We see only the films themselves, and we hear the voice of the author who analyzes each movie with such attentiveness that not every film scientist can do. Frémaux, who has been involved in the Lumiere heritage for more than 30 years, occasionally proudly exclaims, "This frame will be repeated in half a century by Luchino Visconti, and here's how Akira Kurosawa will film, and Cameron in the Titanic will not find a better angle." Indeed, most of the films are made in such a way that it is hard to believe how quickly they, the pioneers, caught and felt the very essence of a movie. And finishing my story, I want you to watch the trailer of the movie Lumières.
Un jour de mars 1895, aux alentours de midi, les portes de l'usine Lumière de Lyon s'ouvrent. Devant elle, une nouvelle invention, le cinématographe. L'aventure commence. 17 mètres de pellicule, 35 mm de large, 50 secondes d'une éternité qui dure encore. Il y eut beaucoup de drôles de machines avant le cinématographe, mais aucune après lui. Lumière, c'est aussi le témoignage clinique d'une époque, de métier, d'un lieu, d'une tradition, sans reconstitution. Lorsque Louis Lumière tourne ses premiers films, tout est là d'emblée et définitivement. Il fut le dernier des inventeurs et le premier des cinéastes. Et dès l'origine, il a fait de ce qui deviendra le 7e art quelque chose de joyeux, de tendre et d'universel.
In my next video, I will tell you about the cinema of the era of Great Terror in Russia. Subscribe to my channel, Ksenia Sakharnova, for a film history blog.